from day one you have a dichotomy that you have 2,000 crores of accumulated loss and you are required to spend for CSR.
Thank you, Bharat. Sohail, from your perspective, what type of transitional provisions would you like to see or grandfathering that you would like to see?
You know, we haven't had the benefit of going through this bill clause by clause, but the fact that there should be transition is a given. The fact that the government is doing transition, so if you look at the way the Competition Act, which is the last most significant act that came in that would impact companies, even that came in a transitory phase. So yes, I absolutely support the view that Mr. Vasani is taking, that whatever the glaring errors, they need to be amended or addressed at the Rajya Sabha. Two, that it should be transitory, absolutely. Perhaps the biggest failure of the legal profession is the delay in the court system. And if we are going to create yet another tribunal, which has no members and which has no expertise to address these issues, and if we are again going to seek to pack it with ex-bureaucrats, it's going to be another mess. So quite honestly, as a practicing lawyer, I fully support the view that we need to be completely prepared. That national companies tribunal is a good idea to create, to remove multiple jurisdictions. I think it's an excellent idea. However, that it should be transitory. I absolutely support the view that Mr. Vasani and several others have taken, that areas of the Act need to be transitory. So for example, you may bring in corporate governance first. You can bring in the dispute tribunal absolutely at the end once you have the infrastructure and the people to build it out. And they've done it in the Competition Act. So I don't believe that it's an alien concept, and they will continue to, I guess, do it in new reforms as well.
Just one interesting observation which I forgot. Can I tell you something very interesting about this National Company Law Tribunal, which they said that they would, the members would come from Ministry of Corporate Affairs, will retain a lien on a job. There's a very unique provision which I have never found in my 32 years career, this kind of drafting provision. They said that the NCLT members should have completed at least minimum age of 55 years. Now for the highest constitutional office, President of India, you require the age of 35 years. But if you want to become a member of NCLT, you should have completed at least 55 years. So clearly something amiss in terms of so many things. And second thing, one of the criteria is anybody who is a practitioner as an advocate for a period of 10 years can become an NCLT member. Now, I can be a 10 years a divorce lawyer in the Bandra court. It doesn't give me a justification. No relevant experience is prescribed. Just to bring you, I hope that they man the right people, they bring the right people, the right talent, and those right talent is available to work as member of NCLT. Otherwise, it's going to be a serious problem, whether they'll understand all these issues.
Thank you, Bharat. Thank you, Sohail. I think I would like to go to Mr. Makhija, because one of the high impact areas that we are seeing that can impact under the company's bill is going to be around related party transactions and how do you conduct them. Sir, what are your views around those?
As I said, that unless it becomes amenable and it becomes easily operable, we are all in a difficulty. So the related transaction area, or you mentioned about that you have to go to the shareholders for giving bank guarantees. We in our business give bank guarantees every other day. So how do we go to the shareholders for giving bank guarantee? Obviously, I hope it will be that you go to shareholders for a yearly bank, because these days we go to the board also for a yearly block, how much bank guarantees we'll be using. We tell the board and board approves. If there's a need to increase that, then we go back to the board. So instead of board, we can go to shareholder once a year. So like that, most of these other clauses which we need to be carefully meeting those, it will have to be amended, or rules will have to be made so that we can work. Otherwise, we'll be made to stop work. We can't be doing that.
So just one more follow-on on that. There is also this requirement to have arm's length pricing between related parties, and how do you feel that, one will have to deal with that going forward?
No, I think that most of us manage even now, that related parties, even the costing standards, etc., also ask for. That arm's length is even now managed. That means if I have a subsidiary or I have a SPV and my construction group is quoting to those people, that we always keep in mind that it is on an arm's length rather than it is something which can be checked by auditor as we have done something which is not right, you know. So as I said, that is not an issue. I don't think that is an issue.
So your advice, I mean, in a sense, would be to keep enough documentation to prove that it is arm's length, so that, you know, if anybody wants to check that or anybody wants to, you know, look into it, it's possible to justify that, because, you know, several companies today would be thinking this is arm's length, you know, just by from a base of experience and all. So do you suggest that, you know, an adequate documentation now is kept, because there is that difference between the Companies Act and the Companies Bill? So, you know, do we need that documentation requirement now? I think that's the key thing.
No, actually what has happened is, again, as a large organization, when you use the SAP, there is always the information available. So it is not that we need to have a separate documentation. If auditing is done and an outsider comes and wants to look at it, I don't think we need have any, we will have any problem in trying to justify or trying to make sure that we have followed the arm's length principle. So in terms of governance, I don't see any problem in managing that. That, you know, we have been in the last few years, Class 49 has given us lots of guidance as well as our intention to follow that. I don't see problem in that.
Right, thank you. Pramod, from your perspective, you know, being an MNC working in India, obviously you have the Income Tax Act which talks of transfer pricing, and therefore, you know, related party transactions do get covered from an arm's length perspective. What we've also seen from the tax perspective is, you know, a company's definition of arm's length is always challenged by the tax office. How do you see this now interplaying with the Companies Bill, which also requires you to be on arm's length for related parties? So let's say you go through a transaction, you have the documentation to base it, and you therefore get your approvals on that basis. The challenge comes from the tax office a year later or whenever it comes. Can you go back and say then that this was not arm's length just because it is challenged? How do you foresee that playing out, you know, from an MNC perspective or even from an Indian corporate perspective?
I think that is where I'll probably differ slightly from Mr. Makhija. See, one is to you being absolutely sure that you are on arm's length. Another is to be able to convince a whole range of external stakeholders that it's in arm's length. And at least in case of taxation, there is one tax authority with whom you engage in a dialogue, you know, take whatever professional help if required, etc. And there is at least over the last 10 odd years during which the transfer pricing has been in vogue, some amount of jurisprudence has developed, though I'm sure not very strong one even at that. And when you superimpose that onto the new scenario where we are talking about a whole range of external stakeholders, all of them may or may not have a shared interest in furthering your corporate governance agenda or even your business agenda. So that's the point of time when we sort of start wondering and worrying as to what kind of additional issues may come up. And for sure, most of us which are in larger organizations, we do have at least some amount of documentation available with us. But I think if you were to try and apply it across the universe, there are many organizations who will be relatively weak on documentation, even though they may be very, very convinced that they are doing transactions on an arm's length basis. But the documentation will probably be a challenge. So probably good business for E&Y, but definitely a fair amount of challenge for many, many organizations. Some organizations definitely, and another thing is that how do you, at least for the domestic transfer pricing, the documentation systems are historically have not really been in place. I think in that context, probably organizations will have to start formally documenting a related party transaction process and policy, etc., and also then driving down, the whole implementation of that. Because fairly often when you are, let's say, two group organizations, two very senior managers will sit down and decide that this is how we want to operate, because ultimately we are group companies. And then to make sure that it is falling in line with the documented policy and there are adequate documentation, etc. I see some challenges in implementation, honestly.